All right, hello everyone. I want to begin today with right where we left off with the non-room. I'm going to take it into the Unreal Engine and show you guys some of the tools and stuff you can use just to tweak things a little bit. So first thing you want to do is go to the internet and start downloading the Epic Games Launcher. So just Google Epic Games Launcher, click on the download, select whether you want Mac or Windows. It downloads, and then once it's downloaded, I've already downloaded it, you'll install it, launch the Epic Games Launcher, make sure you allow all the permissions that come up. And then, well, it's going to update here. But while it's updating, I'm going to go ahead and go to Rhino and set my file up. Okay, so in theory, what we want is this whole thing imported into the Epic Games Launcher. And how we're going to do that is we're basically going to select it all. You want to make sure that, first thing we got to do is go File, go to Settings, and we're going to change the units. So we're looking for units. If you have a PC, it's on the left here. And then you're going to change it from inches to centimeters, and then allow it to scale. Say yes to that, close it. Let's zoom back out. Epic Games, or the Unreal Engine, uses centimeters for its sizing, so keep that in mind as well when you're doing tiles and all other things like that. Centimeters is our unit we're going to be using. So select the whole thing, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and explode it. And you can see I've still got all of the layers over here. We want to make sure that those layers are all activated. And then I'm going to select the whole thing after it's been exploded, and I'm going to go File. Actually, make sure I get it all. I'm going to put it into shaded because my computer's acting funny. Select the whole thing, go to File, Export Selected, and then we're going to export it as an OBJ file. And then where we are going to be putting all of these OBJs, we want to make sure that we create a folder that we're going to use. So I'm going to create a folder in Documents and use that folder to keep everything organized. And I've already done that, so this is the folder I'm going to use right here called Portfolio Game. And that's where I'm going to store all of my assets. So I'm going to create a new folder in there, and I'm going to call it NonRoomOBJ, create. And then save textures, that's important. Go to Options, make sure that you've got it set just like this. Geometry, formatting, mine's Mac, yours can be PC. And then layers as OBJ groups, you want to make sure that's selected too. And unmodified over here, export texture, texture coordinates, all that stuff. And then go OK and export. And just hit OK again. And you can change how much detail there is. I usually leave it right about there. And then it's creating meshes and a materials document inside of that folder. So that should be all done. I'm just going to pause while this is updating, and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so this is the Epic Games Launcher now that it's open. And if it isn't already, it might be on home. You want to go over to Unreal Engine, and then Library, and add an engine if you haven't, or it might say up here to go ahead and add an engine. I'm using 4.24.2. There is an update available, so I do have to update it, but you're going to go ahead and click on launch once we're ready to go. So once again, it looks like I need to pause it while I'm updating, and we'll get going. All right, so now we're done updating. Finally, let's launch it. All right, as it's launching here, gonna get ready. So it does take a little bit of time to launch. Okay, so this is our initial screen. We're going to select game and go next. Go first person, then hit next. And then we're just going to leave everything here pretty much the same. And then make sure and title it and put it in the right folder. Click here to move your object into a folder. And I'm going to call this non-room, or I'm just going to put it actually in the portfolio gallery game here. And I'm going to call this non-room. Create, whoops, let me just do that. I'm going to open, and then I'm going to call it non-room. Create the project. While this is loading, again, this is just about figuring out and playing with materials and lighting and getting kind of a handle on the engine here. So what I'm going to be going over is I'm going to be going over some dealing with materials and dealing with collisions mainly, and then also lighting. Show you a little bit about the user interface as well. So when we open up, this is the default template here. If I right click, I can kind of look around and orbit my view. If I click and drag, I kind of walk through the space. If I roll my mouse wheel, I zoom in and out. So that should give you some ideas. And then also for navigating, this is another crucial one. Like if I wanted to make sure I was looking right at that block, if I click on it and then hit F, it brings the window into the block. Okay? So those are some navigational things. But I'm actually going to delete all of these pieces of geometry here. So I'm just going to select all of them, hit delete. And then I'm also going to delete my walls. So this is all just the stuff that comes in by default. I don't need any of it. Once I've got rid of all the geometry, I'm going to bring in my my non-room. So going to understand what the windows are all around here, we've got on the right side, these are all of your assets. So this includes cameras, it includes lighting, it includes your 3D objects that are in your scene. So we want to keep it organized. Down here is where you have access to those assets in their file format. So if I click on content here, and then I can create a new folder by right-clicking, create a new folder, and I'm going to call this non-room. Okay, non-room. All right, and then I'm going to double-click inside of there, and I'm going to import my geometry. So import. And then I'm going to go to my portfolio game folder and go into non-room OBJ, and then you're going to click on the OBJ file and hit open. All right, and then on here, this is crucial as well. This is the options for how the import's going to work. I want to click on the down arrow here. All right. And then after that, I want to make sure combine meshes is turned off. All right. And then import all. And then there's always a little error because we're not using smoothing groups, because we're not using a animation software. So it should still all work fine though. Okay. These are still loading, but you can see we've got our materials are created here, and once they populate, they'll change from this gray checkerboard to a different shape. See, there they go. Okay. So I'm going to actually right click and bring in all three of these objects and just drag it into my scene. Okay. So once you drag it in, I already noticed that it's rotated the wrong direction. That just is a product of how it's exported in Rhino. We could have probably changed that, but whatever, it's easy. We'll just come over here and go 90 on that axis and see, where did it go? Okay. Now it's aimed the right direction. And we can see here that our point of movement here is way over here. And the reason for that is this is actually where the XY axis is in our Rhino file. So when we import the rest of the gallery space, we want to make sure that it's built off of the non-room area. And yours might not be there, because if you created your non-room in its own file, then you would have this little arrow over here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom out and pull this into our box here. These boxes represent lighting maps, and they also represent boundaries for movement too. So you can create three-dimensional boxes around your room and give the whole area some attributes. And we're just going to leave those default attributes the same there. All right, the next thing, once you get it kind of dialed into where you want it to be, is to find your character. So let's look for the character. First person character right here. Click on that. First click out of this so it's no longer selected. And then click on first person character. And I'm looking to see where he is, basically. Or she, I should say. So we see that's our little diving board area there. That's where we actually want the character to go. So let's zoom in. And I'm going to click and drag. And you'll see as I do, the character's moving. And then this way. Then I actually want to rotate the character too. And I want to rotate him 45 degrees. Okay. And then if I should be able to push play here, see what happens. All right, so we don't have any collisions set. So let's talk about collisions a little bit. Collisions are basically, I hit escape here to get out of that. Collisions are basically what constitutes things that we hit as we're moving through the space. So if I switch this from lit to collisions here, player collisions, you can see that big bounding box around it has a collision. So what we want to make sure we do is, if we get get our first person here, we want to make sure that they are in an area where they're going to hit a collision. Okay. Okay, so just navigating around a little bit, we can see that it was hovering over in space a little bit more than we wanted it to. So let's go ahead and put it right on top there. Let's see if we can get him to stop. Ah, cool. So, can't quite get into the room because I think the collisions are too tight on this, so we actually need to rebuild the collision map on our cube here. So let's click on this object, gallery dome, and right click and go edit gallery dome. Okay. Now, I'm going to actually switch this from lit to unlit, or wireframe here. Sorry, wireframe. And then I'm going to, actually, let's go to lit. Sorry. Okay. Let's change it from player collision to lit here. Sorry. Let's go right click and edit gallery copy. And then go to collision, remove collision, because see it says there's one right there. So we want to remove that collision. Now it says 0. Go to collision, and I'm going to add a simplified collision. And then I'm going to roll down here where it says project collision on the right and change it from default to use simple collision as complex. No, use complex as simple. Yes, that's what we're looking for. If you look really close, it's hard to see. Let me see if I can do it in unlit. Does it? Yeah, there. So that is the grid of our collision now. So it's completely wrapped around the object, which is great. So once you've got that the way you want, you save, close, and then let's look at it in collisions again. Okay, now you can see that we've got a nice opening for the player. So if I hit play here, when I stop, I should be able to be inside of this room. I should also be able to walk out of the room and back into my gallery space. Whoa, or fall off almost. Okay. So you can even fall down into the dome. I don't care about that. I'm not going to change it right now, but you could build something around it like a bounding box that will keep you from falling off. So escape to stop, get out of there. All right, so that's it for collisions on this one. Now I'm going to go back to lit here, and we got to fix our materials. So first one I want to do is change the dome material. So I'm going to click on it, right click, and go to edit. And this is going to bring up a whole new kind of interaction. So I'm going to move this over here, back up to here. All right, so this is how materials work in Unreal. It's actually how most things work. This is just kind of a graphic version of the code that's being put and applied to these objects. So I want to change the material to make it have that same material as we had in Rhino. But I'm not going to do it through this. I'm actually going to make the material again. So we exported the material base when we exported the OBJ. All we need to do is find it. Okay, so here is the non-room OBJ, and you'll see that I've got actually this right here that I can just copy and paste into there. And then I can just apply that to a material, create material here. And it's going to take a second. Okay. And then I can just click and drag and drop it onto this object. And you can see the material is a little funky. For some reason, maybe I'll even just try to find that actual material. Hold on a second. Find that original PNG file. Let's try this one. It's a little different. And I might actually want to rename this material mesh, whatever. Okay, so then I can apply this to the dome just by clicking and dragging it again. All right, but we can see when I push play here that this is what it looks like inside of the room. Pretty cool. So that's kind of a general idea. Now we want to start tweaking this material more, so let's double click on it to get into the material browser here. And some things you might want to do is multiply the material. That's probably the easiest thing to do. So if we go over here and we pull out this way, it brings up this little drop down. Now this is kind of the magic window. If you understood every single thing that was going on in this window, you would be ready to make any game you want, or pretty much anything you want. It's really awesome. So texture coordinate is what we're going to use. So just search for text and texture coordinate comes up and it brings this in. And what this allows you to do is you come over here to the tiling window. I almost think of this as like guitar pedals for an electric guitar or something like that. So everything you plug into it is going to change the behavior of the instrument. So this is going to be a texture coordinate for creating multiplying effects. So if I wanted to do 10 by 10, you can see on our little sample here after it populates that we've got a multiplied effect. Okay? There are lots of things you can do to this. You can also use normal maps. So if I went back over to my object in here, opened it in Photoshop, you probably don't want to do all of this at once because it does tax your computer, those of you who have a little bit older computers. All right, so here it is in Photoshop, and then what we're going to do is go to Filter, 3D, Generate Normal Map. All right, looks good to me. Okay, File, Save As. And I'm going to call it normal. So now, if I come over here and pull out normal, and then go to texture sample, Oh, actually I forgot, sorry. So come over here, and then we need to actually bring that normal map in. So again, we can just copy and drag and drop our normal map. Okay, and then we go back to our other window, which I've got hidden right there. And then where it says texture sample, click on that. It says none. We can go to our assets, and it's right there now. So we apply that, and it should come up right here. It's going to take a second to calculate. And then we have to make sure that we have the same texture coordinate. I wonder if... Yeah, so pulled in that texture coordinate over there. And it should be making them have the same feel to it. Okay, so then we'll save it. And go back to our object. Let's see how it looks when we push play. I kind of liked it before, but so now let's bring in some other materials. So let's go to content here and then go to add new, feature or content pack, content packs, starter content, add to project. So this is just going to be a bunch of different kind of goodies that you can use. But I'm going to actually just close this now and go back to content and go to starter content, and in here we see materials. Still kind of populating, but now we've got all these kind of fun materials that we can play with. There's other cool stuff like particles in here, which you can have. Let's put an explosion happening over here, you know. So see, those are some particle effects. Okay, so Ice Cream Man's going by. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to go to add new, go to material, and then we're going to double click on the material to bring up the editor. So we're going to create a light material, so we want something that is going to have an emissive quality to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull off of emissive color. Actually, no, cancel. So I'm just going to right click, and then this search window is going to come up, and I'm going to look for a constant, and I'm going to set a constant. Then I'm going to make it a parameter. Set, convert to parameter. Okay. What a parameter does is basically a parameter allows you to edit by dragging and manipulating the parameter window to multiply things, to do all kinds of stuff. So parameters are cool. You'll see a little bit more in a minute. So I'm going to actually change this parameter title from param to emission. Whoops. Okay, Then I'm going to right click. I want another constant. This time I want it 3 vectors. And I'm going to title this one, I'm going to change it to a parameter, convert to right click, convert to parameter. Okay. Change the name of this one to color. Okay. And then the third guitar pedal, if you will, I want is actually a multiplier. Okay. So now we're going to work on these. All right, so next thing we want to do is we're going to plug emission into A, just clicking and dragging from this little node. Pull this one in to B, and then we're going to pull this one in to emissive color, C. So this is our base now for modifying how it looks. So if I come in here and change this color, it should change on the model. Okay. Okay, so I've got it changed to blue, but for some reason it's not working. So let's go to parameter default here. This is where you can set the color, and you can also set this. This is what the problem is it's set to 0. So if I change it to 10, we can see that now it has a glow to it. And you can change that parameter as you want to. So then I'm going to save it, apply it, all right. So then I'm going to close both of these, and I'm going to take my emissive material and click and drag and put it right on that. So now when I hit play, this is what I'm seeing as my non-room. And if I think that glow is too bright, if I go back to my material here, double click on it, I can actually drag this down and over and go to my color and go to my parameters here, and I can slide this, and as I slide it, it changes here, and then it should also change over there. But let me see if I slide it way down. Okay. So yeah, now it's not quite as bright. All right, so then the next step to making this look a little bit more realistic is to note that lighting needs to be rebuilt. Well, let's go to our build here and then go to build lighting only. We'll do that first because that does take a bit of time depending on the size of your model, and then we'll build the rest of the geometry afterwards. All right, so now we can see the way that this is looking, and it looks a little dark in here. So we can do some things to modify it to make it work a little bit better. But first thing I want to do is actually clean up some of my materials. I've got some extra that I don't need, like I don't use this one. So yeah, just keep deleting. deleted my dome. Okay, so I cleaned up a little bit, and then I made it messy again. But anyway, so what we want to do now is I want to show you how you can play more with these materials using texture parameters here. So if I bring in another constant by right-clicking and going constant right here, and then once again turn this into a parameter by right-clicking, and then we need to right-click and break the link, right-click and break the link. And then we need to bring in a multiplier, multiply, right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hook up our parameter, which we've already right-clicked to make a parameter, and then our texture coordinate, and then we're going to pull the multiplier into the UV here and the UV here. Okay, so now that by default is set to 0. So if we click on the parameter, we go over here, and we should have retitled that parameter also. We could have titled it something like multiply texture. Now, when I look at the object that this is applied to, if I apply this, it should apply it to the material, which should change it over here. Okay, yeah, so it applies it to that. Then I can actually drag this from 0, because right now it's at 0, it has nothing on it. Drag it out a bit, and you can see it start to multiply. And then I can look at it in the background and kind of pick where I want it to end up. And then once I get it to what I want, I just go ahead and save it. So this is a good setup for a multiplier that you can control, and you can see just a completely custom material basically. So then I'm going to close out of this, yes, save the material. Alright, one other thing we can do to improve this is actually fix this material so it's not opaque, so that green area is gone. So remember when we made this with a PNG file that green area did not exist. So if we go back over here and edit this material, what we need to do is take the alpha and plug it into opacity. And for me it worked. It just made it automatically transparent. But if it didn't for you, click on the grid over here, and then you'll see the blend mode on the materials here. Change it to translucent, and that's going to make your material have that netting translucency that you want. All right, and you can always play with other things too. If you play with the RGBs in the opacity channels, you'll be able to make other parts transparent and that kind of stuff. And if you also wanted to apply some of your knowledge from the emissive material we've created, you can actually make this thing glow too. So all of those types of things are things that you can play with. So I'm just going to apply this. I'm going to save it. Let's look over here now. We can see it's transparent. And maybe I'll come back over to my multiplier parameter here, just play with this a little bit and see if I can make the gridding look a little bit more the way I want. So if I scroll my parameter this way, should make it bigger. Okay, apply that, close that. Oh, do you want to save? Yes. Yes, yes. All right, and I think I might even actually just want to make my emissive material the same as this, or maybe I'll duplicate it and then go back into this material and I'll change the color from this blue color to maybe something red, or yeah, let's do something like, okay. Apply, save. And then we'll drop this onto there. And for some reason the emission on it isn't as high as I want. Let me see if I can tweak the parameter. Perhaps it's because of the color of it, maybe. There we go, now it's starting to glow. All right, so that's pretty much it for these materials. And then if we also remember, we've got this area that if I play the game, I can fall off. Which I don't want to do. So let's figure out a way to stop that from happening. Create an area that you can't go further than. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a bounding box that's going to stop the player from walking off the cliff here. So the way we do that, well, first let's do this. Let's hide the gallery dome. Okay, makes it much easier to see. That's pretty chaotic. This thing right here is called a blocking volume. And it can be found under volumes over here, and you've got blocking volume right here, and you basically click and drag and drop it into the scene. And I'm going to kind of lay it on my platform here, and then I'm going to change the scale of it just to kind of push it in. So change my gizmo to scale up here, and then I'm going to click on the red and push it in, make it kind of like a wall. And then I'm going to also make it elongated, just so it's extra protective. And then I'm going to actually duplicate it. So just duplicate, right click, or find it over here, right click, and then duplicate. Where is it? Well, you can always Command X or Control X, Control V, and it puts it back in the same spot. That's probably the easiest. So Control V again. Switch myself to a move selected tool and grab the red arrow here and pull it to the other side. Okay, so I have my bounding box set up here. Let's go ahead and play. All right, so now I should be able to walk into the room and out of the room, but not... Well, maybe they're too close together. I might have to move my bounding. So it's, I think, a little too tight here. So let's go ahead and click on this. And it has to be such a size that it doesn't interfere with the character, but it also doesn't let you fall. Okay, let's see. Play now. Yeah, there we go. Whoa! I didn't stop myself from falling out the other side, though. Okay, so that's bounding boxes. The last thing we want to do is we go to our content collection here, our first person here. Not audio, first person. And then we go to meshes. Not meshes, sorry, first person. First person weapon, mesh, and then you'll see there's a gun here, and you can click on the gun and just delete it, force delete the gun. It'll go out of your scene, so you don't have that anymore. And then there are other actors in here. Not that one. But like the hands are in here too somewhere. Okay, yeah, so you can delete these hands too. Now, of course, if you don't have hands, you can't control things the same way, so that might be a problem, but like you're not going to be able to grab things without a hand. But just for a walkthrough, if you don't want to have the hands in there, you can do that. But more important is just getting rid of that gun. The hands are fine in the scene. I don't really mind them. But you'll see when I play my game now, you don't see any hands. It's just a first-person view, and you can still walk through and, you know, do everything the way you were before. Okay, so I think that'll do it for our project here. Just getting it ready for playing with materials and stuff like that. It's a lot of information, I know, but hopefully most of it is just things to play with. So thank you very much.